Okay, good morning everyone and welcome back to Scotland's Climate Assembly and to the fourth weekend. So just a reminder that we're in the Homes and Communities group for this weekend. But a few quick things to go over with you before we kind of dive into our kind of third topic, particularly under the communities topic. So first of all, quick reminder to you of the assembly question. So you've seen this many times before, but just a reminder that it's how should Scotland change to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? We'll be particularly looking at the issue of fairness again a little bit later this afternoon. So, as I said, we are in the fourth weekend of the Assembly. A little bit later, we're going to be kind of talking to you about the option of a seventh weekend. We've kind of heard from many of you that you'd like more time to discuss and get into some topics in a bit more detail. So we're going to bring to you a little bit later a proposal for a seventh weekend, and you'll have the option as an assembly to decide whether or not you want to go with that. But for the time being, we're on the 4th out of 6, and that may become the 4th out of 7, depending on what you decide as an assembly later today. So just to quickly talk you through the agenda for this weekend. So last weekend we looked at the two topics or the two questions around homes. This weekend we're focusing on the two questions around communities. So the first of those we will start off this morning, and similar to the format last weekend, we'll have an introduction to the topic from Daisy. Then we'll then have a presentation which kind of gives you an overview of the key issues from the third question. Following that, we'll hear from some different perspectives on how best the types of changes needed to Scotland's existing working practices can be delivered. And then we'll get into exploring the different proposals for change and begin identifying provisional areas of opportunity for recommendations. So that we'll start this afternoon. We'll also be reviewing the process for developing recommendations and bringing that option to you of deciding whether or not you want a seventh weekend, whether or not you feel the need for additional weekends. Then we will be beginning the process of kind of building recommendations for question 3. And as I said, we'll be at the end of today, we'll be returning to the propositions on fairness that you developed earlier in the Assembly, kind of reviewing those, discussing them, and there'll be an overnight vote to look at kind of which propositions you prioritise as an Assembly. So that's the agenda for today, and then just quickly talk you through the agenda for tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, we'll be coming to the fourth of our topic questions. So the final one around communities. Again, we'll have some presentations to explore and kind of understand the key issues and problems. And you'll have, again, some different proposals put to you from some different speakers. And we'll again kind of begin that process of building recommendations for question 4. And finally, towards the end of tomorrow, you'll be reviewing and refining the draft recommendations that you started work on at the previous weekend. So we'll be going back to the 2 sets of recommendations around existing homes and new homes that you started working on at the third weekend, and that you've hopefully seen the kind of latest iterations that have been kind of shared with you ahead of this weekend. So that's our agenda for this weekend. Just to remind you of the conversation guidelines, which I'm not going to go through, but please do make sure you stick with them as we go through this weekend. just a reminder of the different roles and of people on the call. So we'll have Ruth, one of our conveners, with us for this weekend. We've got our team of facilitators who are on hand to support the conversations in your small groups, making sure that we kind of abide by those conversation guidelines, and then also making sure that conversations are as kind of productive as possible and that the assembly can achieve what it's setting out to do. We have the support team who are in place to help with any technical issues and support anybody who needs it. We've got the production team who are kind of keeping the show on the road with Zoom and making sure that all runs smoothly. We'll be having a number of different presentations from evidence leads and presenters who will be joining us throughout the weekend. We've got some members of the Secretariat on the call as well, who will be observing some of the discussions. And we'll also have some observers from the student group and the research team who are kind of evaluating and researching the assembly process. So if you see any of those kind of roles kind of crop up on people's kind of names, that's what they're here doing. If anybody does have any technical issues, then please do contact the the support team. You can do that in all of the usual ways by sending them kind of a message via text or email or phoning them, and they'll pick that up and we'll come and get you some support as quickly as possible. So, final couple of things for me to say, I think. So, just a reminder of the 4 questions that we, as kind of a topic, are looking at around homes and communities. Daisy in a second is going to give us a proper introduction to the 3rd and 4th of these, which focus around communities that we'll be focusing on for this weekend. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. And do we have Ruth on the call at the moment?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, great.
Hi, Tim. Hi, so welcome, folks, to this 4th weekend. I hope you are getting into the swing of it. From what I've seen of the recommendations and all the remarkable work that's been done, things are going well, but it's up to us to make this work. So yeah, I hope this weekend goes really well. And don't forget, you can be in touch with Josh or myself via our email address if you have any questions. Really happy to meet or talk with you one-to-one and give you any support that you need. And I'll put that address in the chat again. Back to you, Tim.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ruth. And Ruth will be joining one of your groups to kind of observe the discussions today. So so if she kind of pops up in your group, then just say hi to her. So without any further ado, we're going to kind of move on to looking at the topic questions for this weekend. So I'm going to hand over to Daisy to talk us through those.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim, and hi, everyone. I just wanted to echo both Ruth and Tim. Huge welcome back this weekend, and thank you so much for being here. As Ruth mentioned, we've had a quick look at some of the recommendations that are emerging, and the amount of work and discussion and debate that's gone in has been, genuinely astounding. It's amazing how much is coming out of this. I find myself, I don't know about you, thinking about some of the learning over the past few weekends, and I find myself talking to my kids about it, and a few things that come up and that just pop into my head. So I hope that it's been as, we continue to have that debate and discussion and thinking time as we get to the next stages. Today, we're going to focus on communities. As Tim said, last weekend was very much about homes, and this is the community strand of the discussion today and tomorrow. It's fair to say, I think, that over the past year or so, we've experienced, we've been part of community resilience like never before, as we collectively face the challenges of the pandemic. And it's not just in some of the amazing community-led initiatives that we've seen, but we've seen a change in, community services. We've seen a change in how we use our streets, how we use our green spaces. We've seen a change in, how we access our healthcare, how we heat our homes, how we work, we shop, we play. And I think as we look forward to this weekend, we will explore some of how we can change as we plan our communities for tackling the climate emergency. So Tim, if you wouldn't mind sharing the screen, I can just find ourselves a very quick reminder of the 2 questions that we're looking at over the weekend. So we're looking at 2 questions. The first one is, how should Scotland change as it delivers community services to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? And the second question that we'll be looking at is, Tim, can we have the next slide? If that's okay. Yeah, sorry. How should community change how it plans its community? How should Scotland change how it plans its communities to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? So I hope you're all comfortable. You've got a cuppa if you've not had one already, and we can jump into starting the morning session of this weekend. Welcome again, and really look forward to spending this weekend with you.
Great, thanks very much, Daisy. And I've just actually spotted that those 2 slides are the wrong way round.
They're the wrong way around. Yeah.
Dealing with those topics in the opposite order. So the one we'll be looking at this morning is the one on the screen now, around how should Scotland change how it plans its communities to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way. But before we do that, we're going to give you a chance to kind of meet your groups. So this weekend, again, we'll be kind of shuffling the groups up. So you'll have some new Assembly members to talk with, and likely a new facilitator as well. So we're going to now go into breakout groups, and you're going to have an opportunity to meet your group, but also to kind of think back to what the Assembly produced in the second weekend around the kind of priorities that that the Assembly felt that your group, focusing on communities, should consider when looking at the topics. So if you remember, we did this for all of the different topic areas. So the other topic areas will be looking at the things that you decided for theirs as well. But for you, we'll be kind of looking at the ones that came out for the topics around communities. So I'm going to ask the production team to set up the breakout groups now. Okay, welcome back, everyone. So hopefully you're all warmed up now and you've had a chance to get to know your group. We're going to jump straight into the first of our topics for this weekend. So the first of the communities topic, just to remind you of the question, it's how should Scotland change how it plans its communities to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? So we're going to hear from Daisy in a second, who's going to kind of introduce her presentation. Just to remind you that when we're displaying the videos, you can choose how you want to view things on your screen. So particularly if you want them larger, just make sure that click the view option and click the standard view to make sure that it kind of comes up as large as possible. We're going to be hearing a fair bit more information again this morning, so do make sure you've got kind of a pen and paper to hand and you're jotting down any key points and any questions as they come up. But you'll also have the opportunity to call Daisy into your group to answer questions later as well. So now it's over to you, Daisy.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope that was a good session you had just now. Yeah, so the next video is an overview about planning. It's because the question that we're looking at is about how we plan our communities. So I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview around what the planning system is. It's a very quick kind of look at what planning means, what the planning system is, some of the reforms, what's the basis for the reforms that are coming up. But also wanted to remind ourselves that we are going beyond the traditional, the traditional definition of planning as the planning process. We are looking at planning in the broader sense of the word, in terms of how we plan our spaces, our streets, our communities, our services, and all of that. So it's worth kind of remembering that as we go through the day as well. Before I introduce the video, it's just to say that it's pre-recorded. We're doing all of these pre-recorded just in case we have issues with the computer and stuff. So it's a video I recorded earlier. But just to set the context, I've had the good fortune to have lived and worked in different cities across the globe. So I grew up in Bombay, in Indonesia. I've lived and worked in Singapore, in the US, and here. And on reflection, so much of the quality of life and quality of place of where I've lived and how I've experienced how I've lived has been down to the planning systems, to to how you consult, whether you consult at all, how things are built. So it's really interesting for me to look back and see, as an architect, as an urban designer, how you interact with the planning system. And it would be good for us to maybe explore over today and tomorrow some of the changes that are already in train and some of the changes that we think we can probably amplify or accelerate or see there's something else that needs to happen. So with that context in mind, Tim, would you mind playing the video? I hope that gave you a very brief and quick overview of what planning means and what the planning system can do. I just want to pick up on the local place plans, and just to clarify that the place plans, in terms of, they're not formal yet. They'll come into force through secondary legislation later on. Scottish Government is expected to publish guidance at that point, in the preparation, where they sit in alignment with development planning. Different local authorities are already, applying various approaches to local place plans, but there's no formal detail yet in terms of a consistent, coherent approach to local place plans across the board. So if you want more information, there's Planning Aid Scotland has a website. There's information on local place plans there. Also, the Royal Town Planning Institute, RTPI, they've got more information as well. So yeah, I hope this just sets the context for some of the framework around how we can start to discuss how we plan our communities. Look forward to hopefully being part of some of the discussions and answering some questions if you may have some.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Daisy, for that introduction to the topic. So we're now going to jump straight into your breakout rooms to have a discussion around that, particularly thinking about the key issues and challenges that you've heard and how those relate to climate change. So we're going to have a 35-minute discussion and then followed by a break. So discussion up until 11:15 and then followed by a break. So over to the production team to set up the breakout groups. So welcome back, everyone. It's time for us to make a start again. So now we're going to hear from 4 different perspectives who each bring a different point of view on how the types of changes needed to how we kind of plan our communities can be best delivered. So from Daisy, you heard kind of an informant presentation, and kind of by that we mean kind of Daisy set out kind of the context and kind of gave you kind of a balanced view of the different issues that that need to be considered. But with the next 4 presentations, they're deliberately kind of going to present different perspectives to you about kind of what changes could be made to help you kind of think through the sorts of recommendations that you might want to make as an assembly. So just as a reminder, before the assembly weekend, we shared with you the template for taking notes for this session, which is the one that looks a bit like a rainbow. So I'm just going to share my screen so you can see that template. So hopefully you've got this to hand, but if you've not, don't worry. Just kind of as the presentations, as we go through the presentations, and as you hear kind of ideas and things that kind of stick out to you from the presentations, just think about what level they relate to, and kind of plot them and kind of take a note on your template if you can, or kind of make a note of kind of what level they're at, because this will help when you get into your discussions a bit later on. So the topic we're focusing on is very much kind of around communities, obviously. So some things will kind of apply to that second level of communities, but there will be proposals that are, I guess, kind of target communities, but would be things that other organisations and other levels on that rainbow might need to do to kind of bring about change to communities. So hopefully there will be kind of a range of things across those different levels. Some of them may be more or less relevant to this topic, so you may end up with some blank spaces, but just kind of have a think about the range of different actions that can be taken as you hear the presentations at each of those different levels. So I'm going to hand over to Daisy now to introduce the first of our presentations.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you. And I'm really excited about these morning presentations. I think we have some real different perspectives, right from the national level to to local. We've got, councillors from local authorities here. We've got, we're starting to look at finance as well. We're looking at a community group that's making change. So I'm really excited to start looking at some of the different perspectives around the topics that we're discussing just now. So first of all, I just want to introduce a video from Heather Claridge from Architecture and Design Scotland, which talks about the 8 principles for climate and carbon conscious design. I think we touched upon this very briefly in weekend 1, and this starts to explore that a bit more. Over to you, Tim. Thank you. Thanks, Heather. And Heather's here to answer any questions later on as part of the breakout session as well. I think for me, there's so much within those principles. And again, it harks back to the discussions we've been having about collaborative approaches and working together. Let's take a minute or so just to reflect on what we've heard and take notes and think about what we've got from that. Thank you. Tim, if you could have the next video up. The next the next video we have is from Casey Rayner. She is from the Royal London Group. And she's here to talk about something, I know that it's come up a lot over discussions in the past couple of weekends. How do we finance place-based transitions? So an overview around that topic. Thank you, Casey. There's so much in there again to discuss and debate and understand. I'm sure there'll be questions coming to you on some of what you said. For me, one of the things that really stood out was putting control back into the place that is trying to make the change. I think that is so important in terms of measuring what matters and, what does success look like for us. So again, let's just take a minute or so to absorb what we've heard and, take notes and some quiet reflection. Thank you. The next video we have is from the representatives of Community Energy Scotland and West Wind, and they're talking about community energy systems. So again, it's taken from national to the to finance and how that works, and right down into community-based work. Thank you. And again, there's so much in there. And again, the words keep coming back to me: collaboration, empowering communities, making sure that communities feel supported, because there's so much that can be done when national, local, and community level, across the board, there's integration of what outcomes you want to see happen, and we can deliver together. Another minute or so just to reflect on that and take some notes, and we'll come back to our last presentation. Great. And to end the session in terms of the videos that we're going to watch, this is the last one. And this is from all of what we've heard. So much of the delivery of change that needs to happen, has to be led by local authorities. And some of the barriers that are faced come at that local level. So it would be good to hear from Councillors Anna Richardson from Glasgow and Councillor Leslie McInnes from Edinburgh, who can give us a perspective from the council and what barriers they face in terms of delivering change. Thank you. Again, so much in there for me. Social justice and climate justice. It's really amazing to see how much work is going into putting the strategic partnerships at the heart of change in Edinburgh and Glasgow. And the conversations around that are really interesting. We'll take a minute or so to reflect on this, and I think I'll hand over to Tim to open the breakout sessions.
Great, thanks very much, Daisy. So you've heard 4 fantastic presentations there with lots of different ideas for the sorts of changes that could be made to how Scotland plans its communities. So now we're going to go into the breakout groups for the remainder of this morning for you to start to identify areas where you would like to develop recommendations as an assembly. So over to the production team to open the breakout groups.